Hello everybody. Well, I know you've been waiting, bating breath. That magic word, budgets. Budgets, he says. How about just the average expenses that many of us have here in the Philippines? It's not a budget, it's just what you need to have. Everybody must have a baseline. No matter whether you live in a condo or whether you're living out in the province in a very basic house, you have power. And of course, how much does it cost for power? That's a loaded question in itself. Well, power is about how many lights you have, how many fans you have, how many cooking appliances you have that run off power, or maybe gas. As an example, an 11 kg bottle of gas, your standard under the sink gas bottle, on average is anything from maybe 900 pesos, depending on the brand, up to currently about 1,000 and maybe 39, something like that, for a gas bottle. How long will that last? Well, again, it's how long is a piece of string. Generally speaking, most normal everyday families, Western style families, the ones that have a Filipino living in amongst a Western guy and maybe a couple of kids, one bottle should last you maybe 2, maybe at a push 3 months. So there's your general costs. Now, of course, if you're cooking every day 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, obviously your gas usage will go up, and you may end up having to have 2 bottles in 3 months. But again, it's a bit like a yo-yo. It goes up and down. Some days it's under 1,000, some days it's under 1,100, but it's around that figure. Some people, of course, still cook with wood or charcoal. It's always nice to have a charcoal barbecue. A little bundle of charcoal might cost you 20 pesos, maybe 50 pesos, depending on where you buy it. But nevertheless, generally speaking, most Western guys consider that gas from a gas bottle is the method of cooking. As far as electric things, again, it depends on what you plan to, or how you plan to cook. If you're just using a wok on an open stove, the gas is what will cook it. But some of you may have gone out and been encouraged to buy an air fryer. Again, a microwave, or a juice maker, or a milkshake maker, or a mixer for making cakes. All of these things use up more of the old power. But generally speaking, most families here in the Philippines that have an element of a foreigner in them pay anything from 2,500 to maybe around the 4,000 mark as a power bill per month. Again, these are my observation and talking to other Filipino as to what their costs are. Westerners tend to build their homes with lots of downlights, and often the downlight, they all come on at the same time, and very rarely do they actually separate themselves from each individual light. A Filipino house tends to have 1 or 2 lights on the ceiling, and either 1 is on or 2, depending on how bright they want them in the room. But for the average Filipino, the power bill is obviously on the lower side because they don't generally have aircon. They use fans. With the supply chain coming from China, a lot of the fans are out of China, come with like 12-volt systems running off the 240 or the the 220-volt electric system here. You'll notice that inside markets they have these little fans that keep the flies away, and they often put bits of tissue paper or rags attached to the blades to scare them off. They're very cheap to run. In fact, in my house in Negillion, I used to put in the center of the room one of those little light sockets, screw-in light sockets, and you could buy a fan that will keep the room circulating 24/7, the air. And they were pretty good. On average, those fans lasted maybe 2 years before they finally carked it. But those were only maybe 300 pesos, 250 to buy on Lazada or Shopee. And the amount of power that they would use up would be minimal. But of course, a lot of you Americans and some Australians tend to say they can't live without aircon. Again, aircon can cost you a lot of money to run, especially if you don't use them right. Aircon is one of those things that people just turn on, and they either pump them up to a high level on the dial, thinking, oh, we'll make it 30. And of course, that's probably the cheapest level of power. If you have an inverter or a double inverted LG brand, just as an example, aircon, but you use it effectively just to keep cool in the evening. During the day you might turn it on for a period of time while you're in a room, but once the house becomes cool, generally speaking, you would hope that it would stay relatively comfortable to move around in. Of course, as your body moves around an area, you generate heat, and therefore you need to keep yourself cool. Some of you will go in the shower and have a cold shower. Cost you nothing for a cold shower except a little bit of water. But those that can't live without aircon tend to probably keep the aircon going through the main part of the house. And of course that can cost you anything from 8 to 12,000 pesos a month. A sizable amount of your pension will be going out to do that. It's okay if you're one of these rich Americans who have got oodles of money to spend while they're here, but for the general public, the general expat who comes here with around maybe the 2,000 mark for a month, and I'm talking Australian dollars here, so you'll have to convert them. To have that kind of money going out in electricity is just pure craziness. You have to learn to adapt to things. You have to become accustomed to the heat. You know, if you're hot and you're bothered by heat, you don't go and stand outside. If there's a cool breeze outside and it cools you down, then fine, sit under the veranda and cool off. Put a towel down your neck so that it keeps you from sweating your shirt against your body. But then the other thing to remember is that whilst you have an aircon, if you set it on 15, that's pretty cold in your room. It's like putting yourself inside a refrigerator. It's not good for your health, and it's certainly not good for your pocket, because the machine will be working flat tack to keep you at 15 degrees in that room. If you want that kind of temperature, you're better off to look at the possibility of settling in a place like Baguio, near San Fernando up in La Union. I know it's not La Union, Baguio itself, it's a different area, but it's very close. It's 45 minutes to an hour from Negillion. But again, year-round temperatures there are much lower than that of the rest of the Philippines. And it can make a nice, refreshing visit to spend a few days up there, realizing that you can find cool places in the mountains. But then carrying on, you know, like, what are budgets? What is expenses? If you want to eat out every day, you're going to be spending, and I'm talking now, 2 adult children, 2 adults, going to a restaurant. You can spend anything from 11 to maybe 1,500 pesos for a reasonably nice meal in an evening in a restaurant. Of course, you can go to a upmarket 5-star living and you can spend 3, 4, 5,000 the same way. It's up to you. That's why I say how long is a piece of string. If you just want to have one day a week or one day a fortnight where you go out and take the family out for a snack or a meal at a local restaurant, if you put aside maybe anything from 1,500 to 2,000, I don't think you'll have any trouble getting some change from the money, even maybe after giving a small tip. And you will have a nice, pleasant evening chatting, hopefully without too much interruption from telephones. But generally speaking, most people tend to cook their meals at home. And one of the good things about that is that you get to choose what you want to eat. You get to make it yourself, have fun preparing it as a couple maybe, as the kids are asked to peel the onions or the potatoes or the carrots. Or maybe just sit there plucking off leaves of a local vegetable. But no matter what happens, you will save money by cooking at home. You'll also find that if you let your wife, hopefully if she's able to cook and her mother or grandmother has shown her how to cook, you will have a treasure in the kitchen anyway, because she will know how to make delicious food that will fill you up and also be easy to produce at a lower cost. It's only us foreigners that insist on our mashed potatoes, pork, beef, multitude of veggies that push the cost of the food up. Doesn't mean we can't have it. It's always nice for everybody to sit down and have a pork chop and munch into it with a few Western style vegetables. But remember, to do that is adding to your budget, adding to your expenses, I should say. But you can achieve that. It's not necessarily with an hors d'oeuvre, a main, and a sweet. It's often just a main. A sweet might be just picking up a mango and peeling it back, or a banana, and having that as your after dessert. Sometimes you might go to a sari-sari store because you can't be bothered going up the road, and you'll pay about 30% more. But you can buy a tub of ice cream, and that always goes down well. But you might pay 150, 200 for a big tub of ice cream. But it's always nice to have. So you always should have in your expenses a little bit extra so that you know you can have those little luxuries. And I say luxuries, they're not luxuries in the sense of going to the Ritz or the Savoy Hotel and having caviar and champagne for breakfast. But they are just simply having a little splash here and there. It doesn't hurt. Your wife may well have a desire for a 8,000 peso hair straightening event, maybe in a fancy salon up in Baguio or maybe in Makati. But does she really need it? Does she want one? Of course she would. Every woman loves her hair and looks after it like it's a treasured belonging. But many of you will realize that you can find a good salon in a local area, maybe even somebody that comes and does it in your home, and you might pay 1,100, maybe 1,500 once every 2 or 3 months, to get those little bits of white hair maybe that are showing through that your grandparents sometimes used to pluck out. But the reality is, what's your problem? What's your problem? Eh? He's barking at something. Probably a cat. Never mind, he's frustrated because he's just had a bath. And of course, he's sitting up on the table and he can't jump down. But Mum to the rescue. But what I'm meaning to say is that you can achieve all of what you want. I mean, you can go to have your pedicure and your manicure done in the local market. You can also have a lady come around and do it in your home, and she will probably charge you double what the market will charge. But again, it's a little bit of luxury in the days and weeks ahead that your wife, who slaves over the stove for you and washes your clothes and does all that type of stuff. So why not? Again, talking about washing, you buy your washing liquid, your washing powder in a supermarket preferably, rather than going to a sari store. Sari stores should be used really as a emergency place to pick up belongings or things that you need in an emergency situation. If you were to buy all your stuff from your local sari store, remember you're going to be spending probably 20-30% more than if you bought them in bulk. Same items from your local supermarket, whether it's just a small supermarket or whether it's the bigger ones, a bit like an SM supermarket, Pure Gold or Robinson's. The point that I'm making is that you can save money by buying in bulk because you have the ability to do it. You'll see locals fill up their trolleys and you think, oh, well, they're doing all right. But what they're doing is they're filling up their trolleys to take back to their sari store and add another 10 or 15% to make some money. But for you can stack your larder full of stuff just like a sari store and make 10 or 15% saving by having them there. The problem is, of course, is that whilst you might do that, you also invite the opportunity to maybe, a bit like when you go to the supermarket and you're hungry, you tend to buy more. Well, it's the same in a house. If you put too much stuff in your house, it will tend to get used up quicker than if you just keep the basics, 1 or 2 items, in reserve. But you will always save more money if you can buy in bulk, and you have the ability to do that being a foreigner. But you're maybe buying for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. So that's good that you can do that. You will make a saving, but just be careful that you don't go out and buy 5 kilos of beef or 5 kilos of pork and realize that in 2 weeks it's all gone. Simply because what you've done is you've provided more food than most families would ever dream of having in a fridge. And the temptation to have a quick meal when mum or dad are out is easy for the younger generation to feel. After all, they open the fridge and they see a smorgasbord of food, and they don't think in terms of portion control or that's for a certain meal, maybe on Thursday. And then the last of all, the other one that you have to think about is, and there are many other things, but the other thing is clothes. Clothing is affordable here because so many countries, when they no longer require the daily fashion, they give them to charities, and charities distribute them around the world in the form of great big bales of used or pre-loved clothes, and some of them are really good quality designer labels, and you can buy them in places around the markets and also on the side of the road where people buy these bales and they sell them again to make profit. But affordability, much cheaper than going and buying them maybe in a department store where yes, it's all nice and clean, it still has the label on, But sometimes these items even come with the labels on anyway. But again, how do you want to dress? You want to dress smartly? What do I got on here? This is a genuine, what do they call it? Crocodile one. Lacoste. There's plenty of lookalikes here that look just as smart, just as well dressed as anybody else, and a fraction of the cost. To buy this new here is around 2.8 to 3.2 for a Lacoste genuine product. That's around almost $100 Australian, $80 to $100. Now you can buy the same thing for less than 5, 10 Australian dollars. And I know which one I would get, because after all, you only wear them to cover your body and to look good when you go out, tidy, respectable. To have a haircut is anything from 70 pesos to maybe 110. Currently, when I came here, it was only 40 pesos. It's gone up. And also you remember that you give your barber a tip of at least maybe 40 to 50 pesos at least. Remember, that's $1. That's not a bad tip for anybody. But then, of course, things I haven't mentioned, like internet. Again, what do you want out of internet? I use internet here. I use internet in the Gillian. And on each occasion, a basic internet connection, which is ideal for doing videos like this, watching videos, playing Netflix, watching YouTube, is around 1,500 pesos a month. That's Converge or PLDT or one of the other brands. But remember that loading your phone is also a thing. Some people just, when I first came here, I used to put 1,000 pesos, $9.99, unlimited for a month. And I realised that that's an absolute waste of money. I now get Globe or Smart. What is it called? Go 99. 99 pesos for a week's worth of internet connection. I'm able to send texts or send a message. And that's all we really need on our phone. After all, we don't know very many people. We just use it to send a text to those that have sent one to us. And maybe even to talk on WhatsApp or Facebook. Again, it's down to preference. Some of you who are running businesses or online work will obviously need a faster or bigger internet connection. And you can get Skylink here, which again will provide you with much more of an uninterrupted service. But you also have to remember that there are power outages here. And it's always a good idea, if you've got any kind of ability to tinker with a bit of electrical stuff, to either buy yourself one of these backup batteries that supplies power to your router in your home. Because if the power goes out, you can still remain online with the backup of a big battery or a battery power pack, like a power bank. A good investment for a few hundred pesos. If you want a more secure one, of course, there's solar. Again, nothing's cheap here. Solar system, a reasonable one, can cost you anything up to 500,000 pesos. You can spend half that and have probably ample supply. After all you want to do is to maintain your refrigerator, to keep your fans going, and also to maybe have the internet connected. But when we come back to budgets again, I think it's reasonable to assume that a single guy will going to be spending more than often a family, because a family, you're more aware of budget than a single guy, I believe, because a single guy needs more things to keep him entertained. A single guy will probably spend more time in one place, so he wants to stay cool. So hence he won't think twice to have the aircon pumped up for his own comfort. But I think it's reasonable to assume that most two adults, two youth living in a home will spend around 15 to 20,000 per month on food alone and have a reasonably good appetite. All the additional things that I've spoken about will use up all of another 10 or 15,000 in your month. Being frugal, being careful, not being miserly, just being able to be prudent with your spending. It's all very well to have a lot of money, but just to waste it, to show others how successful you are, is just being foolish, I believe. It's not about bragging, it's not about appearing to be better off than another person. Remember, a lot of families live on 10, maybe 12,000 a month. A middle class person in the province, they're lucky if they live on 20, but they still have a good life. They still have a fruitful life, and they still get to do some of the things that you and I enjoy doing. They do it because they combine their resources. They grow a bit of food in their garden. They buy off the local farmer, and they buy in the local market to keep their costs down. But it is important that we all stay focused on our expenses, the one we all get attracted to, budgets. And I just hope that somewhere along the line, as simplistic as this has been, you've learnt to understand that yes, you can live on maybe $500-600 American current rate at around, let's call it 60 to the peso. I know it's sitting around 56 at the moment, but if you use a ballpark figure of maybe 60, or even maybe use it at 55, 55 is 55,000 a month. If you can't live and save maybe 10, 15, 20,000 pesos of your pension, then you're doing something wrong. One thing that is most important that I missed out on saying, which I'll add now, of course it means being rent-free. And the only way to be rent-free is to own your own own your own home, to be living in a home that your partner has bought and purchased before you came along, or being fortunate enough to stay with people who don't charge you to stay there, where you just contribute to the costs of their daily expenses. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, give us a thumbs up, and we'll hear from you again soon. Bye now.